So today I'd like to talk about Doctor Who, and specifically Doctor Who comics, because I feel Doctor Who, like many other franchises, it has had a lot of adaptations and alternative media over the years, such as audio dramas and the like. But I feel like the Doctor Who comics don't really get a lot of attention, so I thought I'd talk about them today. Now, Doctor Who is no stranger to comics. They have occasionally had comic strips. Like, I remember the years I spent collecting Doctor Who Adventures magazine. They usually had a comic strip partway through, just showing one of the Doctor's adventures with his companion. And they have released several graphic novels over the years, including The Only Good Dalek, which is a decent read. You should check it out. However, the big one for Doctor Who comics is Titan Comics. Now, while they had previously published Doctor Who related comic media before with the run on Torchwood, from 2014 they began releasing official Doctor Who comics, Doctor Who graphic novels, and the like. And over the years, with growing my comic collection, I have ended up with a couple of Doctor Who stories from Titan Comics. So today I thought I'd go through the 8 Doctor Who Titan comics I managed to collect and rank them from weakest to best. This is like any rankings list. This one is just going to be my personal opinion. You can argue down below which ones you think should be better, or even recommend ones that I have yet to read that you feel are good reads. So anyway, my weakest one in my Doctor Who comics collection is the Doctor Who comics crossover event Supremacy of the Cybermen. Now, as I said, with each of these aren't bad stories, but I think you look at the cover of this, and what do you think? I mean, you think this is going to be some great multi-Doctor adventure, them all teaming up to defeat the Cybermen, but actually there's very little of that. I mean, this one links back to the TV Doctor Who story Hellbent. I set kind of directly after those events, with the 12th Doctor finding out that the Time Lord Rassilon, Time Lord President Rassilon, who was banished during the events of Hellbent, he found himself with the Cybermen and allied himself with them, as he now intends to use cyber technology to essentially reboot the universe and make himself the ultimate ruler. To which you've got the Ninth Doctor, who had just been taking Rose home for a visit, along with Captain Jack, and they find that London and the Powell estate is now overrun with Cybermen. The 10th Doctor was taking his companions Cindy Wu and Gabby Gonzalez to one of the biggest shopping malls in the universe, only to find it swarming with Cybermen and with Sontaras trying to defeat them. The 11th Doctor, with his companion Alice Oberfune, who had been trying to retrieve something for Madame Vastra, find Silurian Cybermen, or Cyberlurians, whichever you want to call them, and then you got the 12th Doctor trying to sort it all out. To which, as I said, with the cover you'd think it'd be some grand Doctor Who multi-Doctor adventure, but given that it's mostly down to the 12th Doctor, it does lose a few brownie points. It is quite a good story though, so I would recommend it, but it's not my number one choice. Anyway, going up one spot, we've got one from the 13th Doctor now, Hidden Human History, the second story of the 13th Doctor's comic run. In this particular one, she and her companions are travelling through time once again, when the companions reveal they do actually know a bit about the bits of history that they're visiting because of a podcast from Earth called Triple H, or Hidden Human History. And the Doctor is a little put out, given that she's not heard of this podcast and they seem to know more than she does. To which they find out that this podcast is run by a woman called Bethany Brunwyn, and that it relates to them specifically as they have an encounter with creatures called the Magda. It does also introduce two other characters named Leon Perkins and Irene Schultz, or reintroduce them, but I'll come back to them in a minute because they do factor into more Doctor Who stories in this run. In fact, they roll into my next one, as my number 6 choice would be A New Beginning, the first official story of the Doctor Who comics run. Well, after the road to the 13th Doctor. But this one introduces us to Leon Perkins and Irene Schultz, two scientists who, while experimenting with time travel, ended up becoming essentially slaves for an alien being known as the Hoarder, who plans to collect various bits of treasure from throughout the universe, and as well as that, alien babies, alien creatures. He plans to kidnap them in order to keep them in his collection. So the Doctor and her companions have to find a way to help Perkins and Schultz free everyone and find a way out of their deal with the Hoarder. The Hoarder is actually quite an intimidating villain. I can definitely see him being big and intimidating on screen. I don't know if we'd ever see him on screen, but there we are. Now, moving up one spot to, I think we're now at number 5, we got one from the 12th Doctor's era, Ghost Stories. Now, here's the thing. This is sort of like a sequel follow-up to the 2016 Christmas special, The Return of Dr. Mysterio, which is actually one of my personal favourites. I mean, I know it's not looked on fondly by everyone, and there are going to be people who just don't like it, but I personally love this story. As it sees the 12th Doctor, who had been played by Peter Capaldi, return to seek the help of former superhero Grant Gordon, better known as the Ghost, along with his girlfriend Lucy Fletcher and her daughter Jennifer. And he needs Grant's help to retrieve a series more wish crystals, or wish stones, from throughout the universe, which include a battle against a supervillain inspired by the Ghost, another planet infested by Harmony Shoal, and an encounter with the Sycorax. I know that people aren't big fans of the Return of Dr. Mysterio, but I remember shortly afterwards I was thinking, I'd love them to do a comic series, or even just a comic issue about the Ghost, and you know what? There you are. Ghost Stories, and I'd advise you check it out. It is a very good read, and it does kind of bring up some interesting points that is nice to think about with humanity. Anyway, my number 4 is actually my most recent one, and it is Alternating Currents. This is part of kind of a big crossover event with the Doctors, and it does link into another story that I will be talking about later in the list, but it sees the 13th and 10th Doctors once again teaming up together, and I will admit it does take a few steps up from its previous story, which, as I say, I'll get round to, but it essentially involves the Doctor and her friends returning to Earth only to find things have changed. The Earth has now been taken over by sea devils. Humanity is seen as a slave species. Pete and Jackie Tyler are still there, but prisoners. Rose Tyler is the leader of the Resistance, and in order to figure this out, the Doctor needs to seek some help from her 10th Doctor form, who had been played by David Tennant. And they ultimately end up allying themselves with a rogue Skithra Queen, who had been played in the series by Anjali Mohindra. So this does kind of link back to Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, and I do feel it is a very interesting read, and I do feel, in a sense, it is a step up from the previous story, but as I said, I'll get to that. Anyway, my number 3 goes to the third story in the 13th Doctor's run, Old Friends. This one essentially links back to the 11th Doctor story, The Doctor's Wife, where we see when the Doctor gets to House, he finds out that House has already butchered several Time Lords and ladies from the years, including, seemingly, the Corsair. In this story, we get to meet the Corsair as the Doctor ends up running into her while on one of their adventures, but then they also find out that, similar to the 13th Doctor's first comic story, the Corsair has found herself allied with the Hoarder, who is seemingly getting her to steal a star whale, which links back to the Beast Below. It is nice to see another Time Lord for the Doctor's Doctor, or in this case, Time Lady. She is a ton of fun, and I can see why she would have been good in the show. I mean, I've no idea who they get to play her. I mean, I was possibly thinking of the woman from Captain America, the First Avenger, the person who played Agent Carter. That's who popped in my head at first. I don't know, but having the Corsair in this story is just a ton of fun, so I will advise you to check it out. Now, with my number 2, in 2018, when it was announced we weren't getting a Doctor Who Christmas special that year, instead of getting a New Year's special, I think we were a little bit disheartened. I mean, it was nice to have Doctor Who at Christmas, Although they did eventually announce that we would be getting a Doctor Who Christmas special, so just in comic form, and that came in the form of the Doctor Who Holiday Special, otherwise known as Time Out of Mind. And I think this is what we would have wanted from a Doctor Who Christmas special with the 13th Doctor. It essentially involves them going to an alien theme park, but when they can't quite piece together what happened there, they end up having an encounter with seemingly elves and Krampus. Which I think this provides everything you want from a Doctor Who Christmas special with Krampus. Just the Doctor trying to figure things out and ultimately doing well. And I feel like it does really well. It does also link sort of back to the 2014 Christmas special Last Christmas. And once again, it never entirely indicates whether Santa is truly real or not. I mean, right at the end of the story, when the companions ask the Doctor, "Is Santa real?" and she's like, "I'm saying nothing," then they just leaves a mince pie outside the TARDIS. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'll take that. But anyway, my number one choice for Doctor Who Titan comic stories is one that I got for Christmas last year. A Tale of Two Time Lords, better known as A Little Help from My Friends. This one was the start, and they announced shortly before Christmas that year that they would be doing a Doctor Who comic crossover that would have the 13th Doctor meeting the 10th Doctor, and this one blew it out the park. The story takes place from the 10th Doctor's perspective, just during the events of Blink, when the 10th Doctor and Martha Jones were banished in the 1960s by the Weeping Angels. So when the Doctor and her companions get there, they have to deal with not only a potential time paradox with the 10th Doctor and the 13th Doctor meeting in one place, but they also have to deal with more problems, i.e. the Weeping Angels, who have seemingly followed them to 1969, and the Autons. And having two Doctors, four different companions, the Autons and the Weeping Angels, all in one story, it just makes for a ton of fun. And that is why A Tale of Two Time Lords, or A Little Help from My Friends, that's my number one Doctor Who Titan comic. So what else did Titan Comics offer? If you know, leave a comment down below. I'd love to know. Anyway, that's my ranking of my 8 Doctor Who Titan Comics stories. What are some of the ones that you like? Anyway, till next time, see ya.